brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into episode 35 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network alongside Kevin Bohannon. My name's Kyle Sutherland. We appreciate you tuning in. It is week 8, so we are officially 3/4 of the way through the regular season of high school football. No surprise with how fast it has gone. But, Kevin, the playoff picture's kind of starting to shake out. We had some games last week with major conference implications. We got some this week, and, of course, that's going to be obviously through the rest of the regular season. But pretty fun week last week. I know we had plenty of high-scoring games for 103.7 The Buzz. We had a chance to go over to Poen, see the Poen-Carlisle game. The Bison, once again, made another statement in Class 2A. But as I mentioned, we're really kind of starting to figure out some things in these conferences, and we'll find that out, or find some more of that out at least again this week.
Yeah, this is the fun time of the year for me because I love looking ahead. And that did not serve me well as a coach on the field. But as an offensive coordinator, yes, because you're always looking to the next play and you can't just remember what you just did last play. So I love looking at possible playoff matchups. You know, we could be facing a Mills and Warren in like the quarterfinals of Class 4A. So, yeah, we found out a lot of things last week. We found out more things this week. A lot of good games across 3A, has a ton of conference championship playoff seeding implication games this week. Same for 5A. It's just a lot to look forward to.
And I want to remind everybody before we get started here, if you have not subscribed on YouTube, if that's where you watch, then make sure you do that. Hit that bell button. That way you are notified anytime we release an episode, and also Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of the audio platforms you prefer. We are there. Now let's go ahead and get into the reason why you're all here. Of course, we start in Class 7A as always. Pulaski Academy, they avoid their trap game that at least many people called it, and they survived Cabot 56-47. Little Rock Christian pulls away in a tight one. I believe that was 8-7 in favor of actually North Little Rock at halftime. But the Warriors pull away from the Charging Wildcats 42-15. Bryant handles Little Rock Southwest 62-0. Conway thumps Little Rock Central 57-7. And Kevin, a game that we had our eyes on in the 7A West, Rogers soundly beats Springdale 48-0. And then Bentonville West finally got its first win of the season with a narrow 35-34 triumph over Springdale Harbor. Then Fort Smith Northside also took down Rogers Heritage 49-14. And then the big one in Class 7A last week, Bentonville thumps Fayetteville 41-10. And Kevin, there wasn't, I think probably for a lot of people, this isn't super shocking. Maybe the margin of victory for the Tigers, more so. I know Hooten's had this as their upset pick, but we always talk about when you have these rivalry games, and I can't remember if I mentioned the score, 41-10, the Tigers won. When you have these rivalry games, you got to throw records out the window. Bentonville was 0-3 start. They won 3 consecutive coming into that Fayetteville game. Trevor Grant with a huge game, 271 yards and 4 touchdowns. And this could very well be what springboards Bentonville into going on another long run and possibly their 3rd consecutive state final appearance.
That's exactly right. So outside of Springdale Harbor one year, let's see who else. Rogers back in like 2006, 07, right in that time. You know, ever since we got to the dual schools, it's okay, 2 Rogers, 2 Bentonvilles, 2 Springdales. It's been Fayetteville and Bentonville. That's who it's been, the top of the 7A West. So, yeah, it's not surprising that Bentonville won. The question is, how close is the West to the Central, and is this just a Bryant and Conway deal now? Okay. But we know that Fayetteville won it last year. They got, to the promised land, went undefeated. And you could kind of see this churning behind the scenes. Garrett Odom comes back from an injury. I thought Fayetteville may pull it out, but they've been playing with fire too much. And ever since the Conway loss for Bentonville, they've just been a different team. And that was a Bentonville team that got beat by 35 at Conway. And that was not what we expected then. So, having to replace that, a lot of firepower with CJ Grant, CJ Brown, Trevor Grant is playing good ball right now at quarterback. So I'm looking forward to seeing them play Rogers this week. That's another thing. We could end up in a three-way tie for first place. Bentonville shut down a potent Fayetteville offense. Now they got to shut down Jeff Regan. So the question is, how does Springdale and Fayetteville bounce back after getting throttled? Do they sit and sulk, or they get up, pull up by the bootstraps and keep going? Season's not over with for Fayetteville. Everything's still in front of them. Yeah, they've lost twice. One a close game to Texas High, and another one they got blown out by their rival, in which the rival started playing Purple Rain over the loudspeakers. So, a lot to look forward to in the 7A West. Then Conway and PA. Conway's going to have to play a full game. Do I think it'll be close? Yeah, for a little while. I think it'll play out a lot like the Bryant game. Conway, I think, just has too many weapons. At the end of the day, it could be, anywhere from an 8 to 17-point win by the Wampus Cats. So I think we're just, barreling towards a Week 10 showdown at Bryant this year between Conway and the Hornets.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Conway is, because they played a pretty tough non-conference schedule for the most part. But really, and I talked to Coach Buck James last week, and even he told me said, look, we've still got plenty to prove because our schedule is really backloaded when you think about PA and, of course, Bryant there, as you mentioned, in Week 10. So there's no question, as we've said all year, Conway's got the pieces. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do every single game. But this back half, especially when you add a PA team in there that was that has been a lot better than people expected. Yeah, I think everyone expected them to compete for that 4 to 6 seed, but now they're competing for that 2-3 seed. Yeah. So this PA team is definitely much better than people maybe expected. Brandon Cobb is playing great ball, and Charlie Cotros did great in stepping up for Javion Walker, who went down in the Bryant game.
Sabota had a big game.
Sabota's really good. He is really good.
2 touchdowns. Yeah, he had a great
game. And that's the thing too, is this receiving core, and you see that with PA. They've had plenty of those years where it's by committee, but then you have the years where you've got Jalen? It's at Washita now. He was there a couple of years. I'm talking about
John David White.
Yeah, I mean, there's sometimes that you have just those 1 or 2, but really it has been by committee. You think about Will Manning. You mentioned Will Sabota. There's a couple other names that you could throw in there. So, yeah, I think that this will be, because Bentonville, yes, they're much better now, but maybe not so much when Conway played them in Week 1. So I think this will definitely be probably Conway's toughest test when they play the Bruins this week. I'm a free agent this week since we're not doing a game for the Buzz. Of course, the Kansas and Arkansas exhibition will be carried on the Buzz, so I'm a free agent. I might, if I don't end up finding any work, I might just go to that game because that one's going to be pretty. I know that'll be probably the popular spot around Central Arkansas, and then, as you mentioned too, Rogers at Bentonville. Going to find out a good bit in both the 7A West and 7A Central this week. And with that being said, we'll go ahead and head on down to Class 6A. Some scores: Benton 56-31 over El Dorado. Catholic survived Sheridan 51-48. That was a very exciting one. I was following down to pretty much from the second half on down to the wire. West Memphis, in a battle of teams that were looking for their first win, the Blue Devils get their first victory under head coach Vincent Newton. Sylvan Hills, their streak is, Kevin, now it's up to 17, if I'm not mistaken, since the beginning of the 2023 season. So the Bears trying to get one before the end of the season comes to close. And then Marion 51-30 over Jonesboro, which I just saw this before we started recording. Jalen Smith is now the leading rusher in Marion school history. I believe it's around 3,600 yards all time. He's averaged like 7.3 yards a carry. So a great career with more to come for that young man. Also, Greenwood, they just keep rolling in a 49-14 win over Lake Hamilton. Mountain Home pulled away from Siloam Springs, which, the Panthers, they were hanging with the Bombers there really in the first half, and then Mountain Home was able to pull away 37-15. Van Buren, 42-28 over Fort Smith Southside. Kevin, really 2 teams fighting for that final spot in the 6A West, and Van Buren got the edge over the Mavericks. And then Shiloh Christian, the defense shines, and the Saints' 46-21 win over Russellville. All 46 of those points were in the first quarter. They had 5 interceptions and 3 pick sixes. So I actually got to watch Coach Barnard's post-game interview, and he was kind of saying tongue-in-cheek, well, I mean, our offense didn't even get a chance to do anything because our defense stole the show. But, Kevin, Tucker Barnard, I said this kind of a little bit before, I don't think he gets the credit that he did.
No.
Now, I know he's only been a head coach in Arkansas this is his second year. He was, of course, on many of those great Shiloh staffs, but you look at what he did with the Gundy boys at Stillwater and all those great teams that he had. Shiloh, man, it doesn't matter the class. They just continue to do what they do.
They've been the one, and we kind of expected this, that out of all the teams that moved up, they were going to private schools that moved up because of the competitive equity factor, that they were going to really flex their muscles, so to speak. Now, Little Rock Christian and PA have proved that they belong in the classification that they're in. Shiloh just keeps dominating. And that's one of the things. Yeah, they played Greenwood as tough as anybody's going to play Greenwood in the regular season. Yeah, we're going to get to the playoffs and somebody's going to play Greenwood tough, maybe. But, they were right there. 28-17 against that offense is nothing to, shake your head at. So, really, and I talked to him, and I said, when he called into the scoreboard show, I said, okay, I've just got to confirm this. 5 interceptions, 3 pick six. One player had 2 pick six. So, I mean, it was just unbelievable what they've done. And Griffin Mason, of course, then, sophomore quarterback goes out. Bodenstein comes in. They just keep rolling right along. It doesn't matter who the player is, but we talk about coaches that come in and follow up, what Jeff Conway did and instill in that culture. What Josh Floyd did, what Gus Malzahn did. It's upper level administration and hiring the same type of guy to continue the tradition. Think of Rick Jones, Chris Young at Greenwood. So the way you maintain culture is you hire like-minded guys that can carry that on or that have been a part of the program. Chris Young was obviously on the staff of Rick Jones. Rick Jones – going all the way back, knew Ronnie Peacock had known what's going on there, under the same direction of an AD. Tucker Barnhart was at Shiloh Christian, back when Josh Floyd was the head coach, as an AD, as an assistant coach. Yeah, he went to Stillwater, had a lot of success there at the highest level in Oklahoma. So these like-minded individuals that come along, they maintain the culture. And that's what's a lot of fun to watch with these schools, that it doesn't matter what players come in, they're going to play up to the level that's expected of them and not just the level that the individual expects. So a lot of fun. 6A West this week. Mountain Home, Lake Hamilton. Mountain Home has to travel to Lake Hamilton. And this is a game that, is for a big chunk of seating. You get a home game if you win this one. So it's really big for 2 teams that have been running the ball really well. Common opponent, of course, Fort Smith Southside. Lake Hamilton had to come back at home. Mountain Home beat the Mavericks by 15 at Mountain Home. So good game to watch in 6A West. And then Benton and Catholic. Look, both teams undefeated. Well, undefeated in conference play. Benton, of course, lost to Bryant in the Salt Bowl. But, Drew Davis, for all the trouble he had against Bryant in the first half, he's got 30 touchdown passes now, Kyle. I mean, he is just rolling right along. Catholic just finds a way to win. Problem with Catholic in this game is, look, they just gave up 48 points to Sheridan. Sheridan had a good game. Sheridan should have won that ball game, no doubt. Had a lot of things just didn't go right their way. They were up by 2 touchdowns, could have been up more, had a couple penalties called. It is what it is. It's high school football. But Benton scored 72 against Sheridan. What makes you think that they won't be in the 50s or 60s against Catholic? Good defense. Coach Cochran's done a great job. I just think Benton's just on another level right now.
That's kind of where I'm at with it too. Of course, Marion is still in that mix as well. Which I think Benton Marion is week 9. I think that's next week, if I'm not mistaken.
Next week.
So Benton's got 2 huge games, and this is kind of what it's come down to the past couple of years. Catholic, of course, won it in 2022, and then Benton took it because I guess in 2022 was when Benton moved over from the West back to the East.
Catholic got them in the first conference game, beat them by 24. So 38-14. Yep.
Yeah. And then I think that year it was actually came down to West Memphis Catholic and Benton, if I remember correctly. But usually in most cases, when these teams, really, at least with recent memory, you look at Catholic, Benton, Marion, that's kind of who this has come down to. And so I know Marion might actually embrace. That's one thing about Lance up at Marion. He loves to embrace being overlooked. He likes to not be talked about. He's even mentioned that to me, like, when Benton and all these other teams are mentioned in our conference, or Greenwood on the west side there, that's something that they embrace, because that's just another thing that they can kind of fall under the radar. But yeah, definitely, Benton this week, like Catholic got them in 2022, and not a lot of people expected that to happen. It was kind of surprising to many that Dominic Keaton ended up outplaying Braylon Russell. Yeah, I was losing the name for a second there, and ended up outplaying him in 2022. And then last year, Benton took care of business. So definitely a really big week for the East, and we'll find out. Really, that'll be the West is for the most part. I mean, it's Greenwood, and that's just kind of been the case, and we expect them to probably go through that undefeated at this point with what their three games left. So, yeah, big week for the East. I also wanted to mention that on the Shiloh Christian side, have you noticed freshman Max Eldridge? You know whose son that is, right?
Yeah.
Old J. Yeah,
Coach
JR. I knew that I had heard that name when I saw he got Defensive Player of the Week, not this past week, but the one before. I'm like, I know that name from somewhere. And then I saw JR's wife post something on Facebook, and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. I mean, because when I started covering JR, Max was probably 5th, 6th grade, something like that. So 4th, 5th, 6th grade. So it's crazy, but his pedigree, it's no surprise whatsoever.
Yeah, that week he had a pick six, fumble return for a touchdown, and an offensive touchdown, I believe, that week, and 10 tackles. So he's doing a lot of things. That's really good for the young Eldridge. Good to see him playing good football.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then on down to Class 5A, Hot Springs. They survived Magnolia in a very important game in the 5A South. Hot Springs now in position to at least get that 4 seed when we come to the playoffs. Also in the West, Greenbrier overcomes Alma 30-16, same position there. They're fighting for that final playoff spot out of the 5A West. Then Hot Springs Lakeside, who did they beat 63-7? I forgot to put their opponent. Hope. So 63-7 over Hope. Camden Fairview. Let's see. Was that
63-7?
Okay, so it was back-to-back. I didn't have a typo there. Over DeQueen. The two-time defending champion at Parkview, 57-7 over Arkansas High. Maumelle in an interesting one, 17-0 over Jacksonville. Wynn takes care of business over Batesville, 31-10. Also Valley View, 44-16 over Brooklyn. 42-7 Nettleton over Greene County Tech. And then wrapping up the 5A scores, Harding Academy 49-8 over Paragould. Whitehall 42-12 over Watson Chapel. Joe T. Robinson looks like it is going to go for that. Well, actually, they're not looking like they are going to go for another conference championship when they play Searcy this weekend. They take down BB 26-16. Morrilton remains undefeated, taking down Harrison 49-26. Farmington keeps rolling along, Kevin. They have really just continued to stay pretty quiet, but they get a win 27-14 over Valonia. And then, as I mentioned, Searcy got a big one with Joe T. Robinson this week. The Lions survived Pine Bluff 28-21. They were down by 18, I believe it was, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and they scored 25 unanswered. So coming down from Class 5A, or coming down from Class 6A to Class 5A, Coach Clark has these guys rolling. Big one between Searcy and Joe T. Robinson this week. I don't know that many people saw the conference championship coming down to both of those schools. Maybe Robinson, but maybe not so much Searcy.
We knew Searcy was going to be there. I mean, Zach's done a great job. Zach and I go way back to played against each other in high school, and he's in his element, doing a great job coaching. He just kept coaching on Friday night. Him and his staff did. They were down 21-3, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was kind of just snake bit. They pulled it out in the fourth quarter. They got good. They got some good skill guys. Curtis Goodrich, I think, 17, 18 touchdowns on the year. I know he went into Friday night's game with 16. So, coming back this year, look, this was the right scenario for them. Even though they haven't been in this conference or in the 5A classification in over 20 years. So you figured they may go to the East, but yeah, they're in the Central. So it worked out really good for them, and I'm really looking forward to it. It looked like Robinson and Searcy just kind of looked ahead. to this coming up week. Both teams did, but sluggish starts, and you pull out a victory. Robinson hasn't won very pretty, but they've won. The only time they've lost is to Pulaski Academy. So let's give credit where credit's due with Coach Escola. Those guys, Deuce Williams coming over from CAC is finally playing up to his capabilities. I think we've seen that recently. So, and going to Maumelle, look, Whitehall and Maumelle is intriguing this week. And I'll tell you this, Kyle, if Whitehall wins this, they're more than likely going to make the playoffs, which is kind of shocking considering the start that they had. Look, Daryl Patton knew it was going to take a while to get this team rolling, get this program rolling, get it back up to where, the Mike Vaughn days, the Bobby Bolding, getting to the playoffs with a chance to get to the state title game. So they're doing a good job right there. I'll tell you this, it won't be a high scoring game the way Maumelle plays. They're just kind of getting through games. It was 7-6-0. They're relying on field goals. 17-0 over Jacksonville was the final. You think they should steamroll Jacksonville, but they didn't. A lot of ways that, Maumelle has won games this year. So over to the 5A East, Harding Academy and Nettleton. This is huge for Nettleton. Nettleton, they've been right there the whole season. Look, those guys are 6-1 and 4-0 in conference play. And they're saying, why not us? Everybody's talked about Valley View. Everybody's talked about Harding Academy. Why not them? Everybody's talked about win. Nettleton has a potential. They win this game, they're playing for a conference title next week. Next week against Valley View. So a good position for Steve Hampton and the Raiders going into a big home game, for them this week. Then Farmington and Motown. We talked about, Greenbrier Alma game, Kyle, was you and I talked about it being a gut check. Greenbrier comes out on top, even though they didn't play the best game, but a good win for the Panthers. It's going to put them, in good position for the playoffs. But Farmington just takes care of business. Aiden Lester had another good game. Methodical beat down of Valonia, 127-14. And now they get to play at Morrilton. And wouldn't surprise me if Farmington goes in there and wins that. This is two teams that, we didn't think they would be as good as they are this year. Farmington, they were picked to be at the top, and then everybody left. Tommy Tice has done a great job. Him and Cody McNabb possibly up for Coach of the Year honors for what they've done this year. So great game in the 5A West that's going to determine the state for the 5A West championship.
What's going to be interesting here over the next couple of weeks as we do our playoff scenarios, looking at brackets and, who could be here, who could be there, because the West is matched up. They're matched up against the East or no, the Central.
Yeah,
Central.
You
okay,
got
so they're matched
East and South. Yeah.
Because let's say Morrilton. So like Morrilton could possibly play like a Whitehall or something like that.
Or a Maumelle.
Or a Maumelle,
yeah.
So that's kind of what because there's no doubt these teams are talented. We probably haven't talked maybe as much about them as we have some of the others from the Central, especially the South, just because the South has been the supreme conference in that classification over the past couple of years. But that's something I'm really keeping my eyes. I mean, we got some really good coaches in the West, Kevin, especially when you added a Clint Ashcraft, when you added a Tommy Tice, and Cody McNabb has always been a great coach in his own right. Like that's and then you got Randy Tribble that coached in college for years.
Russell Bush has a great tradition, long coaching tree. So
so adding Ashcraft and Tice to that. I mean, that just takes a whole nother.
Then you got Keelan at Harrison. Harrison's having a down year, but a lot of great coaches in the 5A West.
Yeah, no question about it. Then on down to Class 4A, Elkins with a shutout over Prairie Grove, 52-0. Also in that Region 1, Gravett shuts out Berryville, 57-0. And how about Green Forest, Kevin? They take down Lincoln, 42-24. Now they've got a big one against, of course, top-ranked 4A Elkins this week. But I know that was definitely, good luck to anybody against, especially now I know the Warren team that played Elkins in week 1 is probably a different Warren team that you're going to see even now, but also once we get to the playoffs. But Elkins just really has taken care of business after many thought them to possibly take a step back with all they lost. But Lone Oak, how about the Jackrabbits, Kevin? Get another shutout over CAC on the road. 3 of their 4 conference games have been, I believe their defensive coordinator's name is Solomon Walker, if I'm not mistaken, came from Harrison. But they've done a phenomenal job. Lone Oak has really done well since they've started conference play, but 3 of their 4 conference games have been shutouts. They've only allowed 7 points throughout thus far. So also Mills continues to roll 63-7 over Riverview. Southside Batesville, we'll talk about them in just a second, 21 14 over Highland in a battle of undefeateds. Clinton 47-16 over Dover. Pottsville 51-20 over Ozark. And then the Dardanelle Sand Lizards, they just keep rolling. Another huge game from Creed Vega, 51-14 over Lamar. Those Mena Bearcats, they're 7-0 for the first time since 2010 with a victory 45-12 over Waldron. Arkadelphia 49-17 over Benton Harmony Grove. Malvern 52-37 over Bauxite, which want to send prayers up to Eli Perry. The quarterback for Bauxite went down, had an ugly injury, but from what we've gathered is going to be okay. Just gets to go through the rehabilitation. Also Hamburg 48-0 over Crossett, and then Warren 41-7 over Star City. Kevin, we haven't talked a lot about Southside Batesville. I think we have. Maybe we did maybe a little bit in the preview before the season started, maybe those first couple of weeks, but they're still undefeated in that 4A3 conference. Now, look, let's call it what it is. The 4A3 is not the strongest in Class 4A, but you can only play with what you're dealt. And they played in a lot of close games. You think about the Forest City game. Of course, this Island, there's Pocahontas was a very close one. So there's something to be said about surviving these games. They made it to the second round of Class 5A last year on a walk-off field goal by Joel Busby, if I'm not mistaken, is their kicker's name. And they're right there in that mix, too. We talked about before the season, this was probably that state title contender in 4A. I guess Rivercrest, now that Rivercrest is in 3A, that's that state title contender out of that kind of east region in Arkansas. But Kenny Simpson's done a great job there. They run that interesting gun tee. I love that gun tee offense. So Southside's, they've been a really good regular season team over the past few years, and they just keep doing it again. Yeah, it's funny going back and watching film on them, and it's funny when you see a shotgun formation, but you have a wing back that's at a 45-degree angle. They're really running the wing tee, but they just have the quarterback at 4 yards. I mean, that's it. And what a year Owen McLaughlin has had. He went into Friday night's game needing 5 yards to get over 1,000. He did it. So congratulations, Owen McLaughlin. He's one of a few that have already gotten over 1,000 yards going through, week 7. So, and he's averaging, 7.5, 8 yards a carry out of that offense. So the thing about Southside is they've been able to do it in the trenches. And Kyle, you and I talk about this all the time, that if you can handle teams up front on both sides of the ball, you've got a really good chance to win. Southside has done that. Last 2 years under Kenny Simpson, this team hasn't won a whole lot of games and been to the playoffs in their history. And it's not a long history, being where they're at. So when Kenny Simpson came back, he was like, all right, this is going to be a revival. And he has taken those steps, and he's put Southside on the map. So excited to follow those guys, and shout out to the Southerners. I dig your alternate uniforms. That is some really good stuff you guys got going on up there. So kudos on that. Elkins. So Kyle, we thought it would be a good game, but it wasn't. And once you go back and kind of look at everything in terms of, okay, who Prairie Grove had played on the front end of the conference play, lower teams in the conference. Okay, we get that. They gave up 3 points to Berryville, and Elkins just steamrolled them. I was talking with Barry Grooms about this, on Friday, and it's, the offense with the firepower they have, but Poochie Townsend and that defense on the back end, they do not get enough credit for what they've done this year. Shutout after shutout, they just keep rolling along. 50 points a game once again. Zach Watson has done a tremendous job, and like I said earlier in the show, it all starts at the top, and Jeremy Mangrum has done a fantastic job of getting facilities to match what's going on in Washington County right now. So they're not up there with Fayetteville and Bentonville, but they are the big boy of Class 4A right now. They're head and shoulders, them in Arkadelphia, and then it's everybody else. That's tough to say, but that's where we're at right now. So, kudos. What they're doing at Elkins is – lose Dizzy Dean, lose Deshaun Chairs, and you get a Jaquay Walton who had 6 touchdowns on 16 touches last year. And now he's getting to be the star of an offense averaging 50 games. So guys are rolling right along. Prairie Grove has to bounce back this week. They got to play Gravett. Gravett's 7-0 quietly. Roaring to a 4-0 start in that 1-4A. So Prairie Grove has to win this one if they want a shot to host a playoff game and be a 2 seed. Warren, they're starting to come together. Burks is playing well at quarterback. Antonio Jordan had a great night again.
over 200 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns.
On like
Stuttgart,
6 catches or something.
6 or 7
He
catches.
had like
That's
6
what I had.
catches.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Stuttgart, huge win for Josh Price. Kane Price had a really good game Friday night. Heard Florida State's been inquiring about him via our man Richard Davenport. So Kane Price, still a young pup, but they get a 17-point win over Monticello, positioning them for a run at the playoffs. Still a lot to figure out in the 8-4A, but Malvern and Arkadelphia getting ready week 10, baby. It's going to be a heck of a showdown in the 7-4A.
One more thing about Elkins. Zach Watson, he's a former Greenwood assistant, right?
I think so, yeah.
I know if I'm not mistaken, that made me think of that because you were talking about, Chris Young and, coaches that just know those standards that have been set by the Rick Joneses and others. And I was thinking that Watson was on that Jones coaching tree as well. Wouldn't shock me. He's done a phenomenal job. So on down to Class 3A. Where did my thing go? Newport over Manila 58-8. Boonville 40-8 over West Fork. Falk hands Center Point its first loss of the year, 36-32. Mayflower remains undefeated with a 42-13 win over Quitman. Prescott 49-6 over Parker's Chapel. We learned from Coach Brian Glass, of course, how to fix a bum ankle. We'll go into detail about that here in just a second. Bismarck 52-16 over Harmony Grove. Washita County. Mansfield 48-6 over Cedarville. Osceola 47-7 over Harrisburg. Cutter Morning Star gets its first win back since coming back to the 11-man ranks, 50-14 over Two Rivers. Rivercrest 51-20 over Walnut Ridge. Risen remains undefeated, 56-13 over Drew Central. Also, Fordyce remains undefeated, and these two teams, Fordyce and Risen, will square off, likely to both be undefeated in Week 9. But the Redbugs take care of Lakeside Lake Village, 54-8. Glen Rose rallied from, I believe it was 21 down.
21-0.
21-0 and came back to beat Perryville 49-21. So scored 49 unanswered points. That prediction we had for Glen Rose to come back and win that conference title looking pretty right now.
Thanks for making us look smart.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go back to, we'll talk about the games here that we've got this week. Got a couple of big ones, of course, but Brian Glass, the head coach for Prescott. I love Coach Glass. So he calls in, for those that didn't listen to the scoreboard show on Friday night with Kevin, Barry Grooms, and Randy Rainwater. He was talking about one of his players that had a bum ankle, and this player's his grandmother, who is very wise, has been around a little bit. Talked about getting a dirt dauber nest. And Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. Getting a dirt dauber nest, soaking it in vinegar, and then wrapping it in newspaper.
That's right.
And basically putting it in a plastic bag, letting it sit for a bit, and then you put it around your ankle. Well, this kid was barely walking around on Thursday, and then he plays a really good game on Friday night. Well, then Coach Clay Toddy, who went to Washita Baptist with Coach Glass, so they've known each other for years, calls in and talks about red clay is also a great substitution if you didn't want to use the dirt dauber nest. So get your health tips from South Arkansas. Anywhere in South Arkansas, that's where – and I know Clay Toddy's at Wynn now, but, of course, he's from Fordyce, spent all those years at Risen. So yeah. South Arkansas, that's your tips for fixing bum ankles or really anything orthopedic.
Yeah, we were talking about it. I was talking about it last night, and they were just how old school Coach Glass is. And, Coach Glass has been there for forever. He was an assistant for a while, and track program has been tremendous under him, and he held that head track title even when he got promoted to the head football coach. So when it happened, and I was the one interviewing him at the time, I was like, did I really hear what I just heard? And it made for a great night of radio, even though it was at like 10:45. And it's funny enough that Glenn Parrish from Boonville called in right after that. That's the stuff that you can't script for live radio, and it just panned out the way it was. It worked out the way it did. So, Prescott, huge game this week with Bismarck. And Bismarck has, went 10-3 last year, made a great run. Ben Keithley, of course, back at quarterback. They've had a good run this year. So, they get to prove that they're the big dog right now with Prescott and them in the same conference now. They get to finally figure it out. and Bismarck playing for a conference title this week. So it really is a huge game right there. Booneville, Mansfield. Look, yes, this is for a de facto conference championship. I don't think it's going to be that close of a game. Booneville's going to be keep rolling right along. The difference between Booneville this year and last year, look, Dax Goff carried them to a state championship last year. There's been games to where he had 300, 350. He left with just about every rushing record and tackling record defensively in Booneville history. So even has a couple of state records right there. So Booneville's able to distribute it a few different ways. They got 4 or 5 guys that can carry the rock. Jace Washburn playing quarterback. They throw it when they need to. Other than that, they're just rolling right along, folks. So those 2 games, and then the 3-3A, you got championship game, and then who gets the 3 and who gets the 4. So Rivercrest and Osceola are playing. I've learned not to pick against Rivercrest. Cavante Washington proved me wrong. He had another outstanding night. They take on Osceola. What a coach Robert Hooks has done, going back to his alma mater, back to the place where he started his coaching career. He's got, young quarterback Tyler Bell is having an outstanding year. So Rivercrest playing at Osceola. Rivercrest right there, top 3, right behind Booneville, Prescott. You got to think Rivercrest is right there. Then Walnut Ridge and Newport. Rivercrest beat Walnut Ridge by 31 on Friday night, Kyle, 51-20. Newport played them within 4 points. So Newport bounced back. They scored 58. Yes, it was against Manila, but still, out of the 2-game losing streak that they had, they didn't have much of a hangover. So I expect them to get a W with Walnut Ridge coming in. Walnut Ridge picked by the coaches to be, the champion of that 3-3A. They figured it out. It's easy on paper. It's tougher on the field.
It's ironic. It's not surprising, though, that Rivercrest is in this position, because that's one of the things that I had mentioned a couple of different times when we were talking about from the beginning of the season, non-conference play, just how deep this 3A3 conference is. You thinking about when you add Rivercrest, they're always the team that people sleep on, might leave out of that mix when they were in Class 4A. So I think Coach Fleming, I say all that to say, I think Coach Fleming likes it when you don't pick them. Kind of like what I was mentioning about Marion. They're another one of those NEA schools that does not mind being overlooked, because at the end of, there's so many different times where look at 2021, Marion, nobody expected them to go anywhere. And then they made a run to the semifinals. So always love to see stories like that. And then on down to Class 2A, last but not least. I keep losing my place today. Mount Ida 62-36 over Hector, defending state champion Bigelow 49-7 over Mountainburg. Conway Christian blanks Mountain Pine 63-0. Mark Tree survives McCrory 38-30. Des Arc 46-13 over Izard County Consolidated. Mineral Springs 32-13 over Gurdon. Junction City 47-20 over Dirks, and then Murfreesboro 54-8 over Lafayette County. Also got to mention the big one, Carlisle 62-20 over Poen. And Kevin, if we haven't said it already, Carlisle's definitely the team to beat. You look at Caden Klingman, Gavin Davis, Jaden Elliott, also throw in Lawson Petrus, Kawan Purnell. That's just skill players that I'm talking about, plus freshman quarterback Ty Tanksley. There's so many of these guys that you got to stop. Plus they're good up front. They're not as big as they were across the board last year up front. They're quick. They're quick and they're effective. They get on their blocks. Gabe Boyle, to me, is one of the more underrated players when you talk about if you need a 3rd and short converted, whether coming out of the backfield in the flat, handing it to him up the middle, but his blocking. That's just one thing that really sticks out to me. But a lot of times they run these screens, and it's just a short. It's kind of similar to what we've seen Harding Academy do so many different times. You get the ball to your playmakers and you just let them do the rest. And Carlisle just has so many of them that you can't keep up with their speed. That's really what happened with Poen. Poen, I think they actually won the 3rd quarter, like on the scoreboard. They scored.
It was close.
So it was much closer to the score. I want to say they outscored them 14-0, maybe. It was something like, but the 3rd quarter was Poen's. They moved the football really well, but the game just got away from them. It was 34-6 Carlisle at the end of the first half. So really just got away from them. So it just shows, you look at the Junction City game, you look at the Desert game, you look at this game. That's 3 statements out of 7. And the rest of them is just Carlisle doing what they're supposed to do. But that's 3 times that they have really made, not just have had a big win, but made a statement at that. They really just, for the most part, haven't been touched.
That's right, and we kind of knew it coming in, and it was funny. I got a message from my good friend Steven too, who's the head baseball coach and helps out over at football and everything. He was like, "Yeah, we got bulletin board material. We're going to prove everybody wrong that it's Pone's not just going to keep it close, and they're looking to make a statement, and they did. Colt Barrett, look, they had his number one target was out Friday night. That played a factor. But Vic Barrett's squad, that they played hard, they kept playing all the way through. Like you mentioned, it was 34-6 at half, at half, and then I think it was 42-20 going into the fourth quarter. So they kept coming, kept making plays. They had a pick six, a fumble, scoop and score. Just had one of those. I think he had the scoop and score right there at the end to make it the final margin 62-20. And it's just hard to play those guys for a full 48 minutes. They just keep coming. So the Bison, they're clearly head and shoulders above everybody else right now. That they've effectively claimed the conference. In that conference, kudos to Joe Bosanquin. Hazen had a tough start to the year. They started out 0-3, I believe, and now they're 3-1 in conference play. They beat Baptist Prep 44-0 on Friday night. Baptist Prep, it's a little bit tougher going in that 4-2A. They've been outscored 173-27. So it's tough. It's tough. So England and Hazen, big game coming up in that conference. Mark Tree, good win over McCrory, 38-30. TJ Hodges, Ken Carter showed out again. And then East Poinsett County had a huge win over Earl, 36-26. Puts them in good position at 3-1 in that conference, right behind Des Arc. Des Arc plays Cross County this week. Des Arc runs the ball really well. They're going to face the defensive line that they haven't seen this year, the biggest defensive line. So it'll be interesting to see. You got interesting dynamic here. You got Van Pascal, who's coaching at Cross County. His son Tyler and family member BJ coached at Des Arc, so he knows what Des Arc's about, knows what they've done and everything. That could be Des Arc could be on upset alert this week. But if they win, they effectively clinch a conference title. Bigelow and Mount Ida, another interesting game. Mount Ida, of course, that Veer offense is tough to stop under Coach White. Bigelow's played really good defense this year. Offense hasn't quite there. They got a lot of young guys coming off that state championship season. So interesting game in that conference. And then down south, Murfreesboro and Junction City for all the marbles. Both teams 4-0 in conference play. The winners should get the 1 seed out of the 2A.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to call my man Brad Chesser because I don't know if you remember at Media Days, I kind of asked him, hey, you're adding Junction City to the mix in this conference. How much stronger does it make it with you guys, Mineral, all those different things? And he said, Kyle, that's week 8. I'm not worried.
Yeah.
Which I was more so asking a question about them being added to the conference than I was about the game. But Brad and I we've been friends for a long time, so he's going to go harder at me probably than anybody else. But I'm definitely going to make sure and call him and be like, hey, it's week 8, so let's talk about it now. But yeah, definitely a good one there. I mean, you expected probably the Rattlers, Mineral Springs, and Junction City to be in that mix. And Kevin, I talked to Devin Ball right after. So they lose the Carlisle game, which we called for 103.7 The Buzz. I talked to him right after that. They were on a 2-game losing streak because they also lost to Harmony Grove OC in week 1. Yeah. And it wasn't just coach speak. He was telling it like he truly felt. We still feel like we're going to be at War Memorial in December. We've just got some things to clean up. And since that Carlisle game, what are they? They're undefeated, I believe. They're on a 5-game win streak. So, and Murfreesboro had a little bit of a tough start there and non-conference play as well, and they're rolling. So definitely going to be a big one there. And, man, I'll tell you, I know that week 10 matchup won't have as many – and there will probably be a good bit of attendance at this game with Junction and Murfreesboro. But, I don't think that there's going to be anything to match what we saw. I always go back to that week 10 game last year, just the amount of that was small town football. Absolutely. At its finest. And we could have something similar to that this week just because, I mean, Junction, obviously, we know the history there. Murfreesboro may not have a lot of history, but they're coming off of that great season from last year when they won, 11 ball games. So, yeah, definitely a lot on the table, pretty much everything on the table in the 2A3 this week. And then finally, last but not least, let's do I said last but not least with 2A, but we'll also put that towards the state tennis roundup as well. We'll go through some of last week's results. So in Class 6A, Rogers won the team championship. Theo Haggerty from Fayetteville won the singles. Doubles went to Aiden Matthews and William Edwards of Rogers. 6A girls, Bentonville won state as a team. Singles belonged to Caroline Jones of North Little Rock, while Abby Schumann and Kavya, I'm going to butcher this. Kavya Karichity of Bentonville took the doubles championship. 5A boys, Shiloh Christian and Mountain Home were co-champs. Justice Thurlby of Shiloh Christian took the singles title, while Pierce Blackman and Finley Chafin of Mountain Home took home the doubles. Girls, Valley View won the team, while Ava Sellers won the singles from Little Rock Christian, and Avery Tranum and Sheridan Hernandez from Searcy won the doubles. 4A boys team went to Monticello. Singles, Gavin Hoflich of Southside Batesville, and then Luke Hairston and Jacob Romero from Monticello won the doubles. Girls, Joe T. Robinson as the team, and then Zayla Ware from Robinson won the singles, while Nashville's Addison Tate and Riley Backus won doubles. Hang with me here. We got two more classes. 3A boys team, Haas Hall of Fayetteville. Singles, Cole Castman of Haas Hall, also Max Hill and Elijah Schumann from Providence Academy won the doubles. Girls, Thaden and Elkins were co-champs. Singles, Autumn Nguyen of Thaden, and then on the doubles, Audrey Walter and Caroline Walter, which I assume are probably sisters or cousins, from Elkins won the double championship. And then finally in Class 2A, the boys from Riverside won as a team. Thatcher Durham from Riverside won the singles. Justice Stewart and Keaton Law from Crowley's Ridge won the doubles. And then the girls, Riverside and EPC were co-champs. Riley Ashcraft from East Poinsett County won the singles. And then Brooklyn Berry and Mallory Booth from Riverside won the doubles.
Did you get a reason why the lowest classifications there were co-champions?
I meant to ask because that happened some. Well, actually, in 5A, the boys, Shiloh Christian and Mountain Home were co-champs. Now, okay. I did not make this script out until like Sunday night, so I didn't have a chance to talk to AAA or anything. But I'm actually kind of curious about that too, just because you don't see that very often. Now, again, it has happened. I've seen it in tennis and other sports, but I don't know the exact reasoning behind it. But.
So I want to give a shout out, and I believe this is correct. He can correct me if I'm wrong. Todd Escola has won a football state championship at Robinson. He's won a soccer state championship, and now I believe he's won a tennis state championship. So, Todd, if I'm wrong, please let me know. But kudos, Robinson, proving they're more than just a football, baseball school.
Yeah, I know. I can't remember if it's Trent or Hunter. One of his sons is a pretty big-time soccer coach, if I'm not mistaken. So both of them, of course, went into coaching. But, yeah, tennis, my mom, before she had she's disabled now, but she used to play tennis way, 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 way back in the day. And that was one thing I tried, and I think I lasted about 10 minutes on.
I did the same thing.
It's great cardio.
Yeah, I love hitting the ball, but I wasn't able to put top spin on it. So I would just hit it out every time. I'm like, I don't like this. I want to hit it as far as I can. And, yeah, it just wasn't in the right mindset for me when I was 12 years old.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing for me is I think I tried it when I was 13 or 14, and it 5-10 minutes tops was about all it lasted. So, but with golf being, I guess we still have cross country to go, obviously football, and then we've got volleyball state championships here in a couple of weeks. So the fall sports are winding down. Speaking of volleyball, you can catch our coverage there on naturalstatesports.com. You can also see it on our Twitter/X and Facebook pages. Jeff Alpern doing a great job there. We've got regionals for 2 through 4A this week. The 5 and 6A schools are wrapping up their regular season this week. So we'll have the state tournament next week before the championship games conclude on November 2nd at Bank OZK Arena in Hot Springs. But Kevin, unless you got anything else, we'll wrap this puppy up.
Let's roll. Congratulations, Ouachita Baptist. Huge win over Harding University on Saturday night. Great atmosphere, great game all the way through. Todd Knight, Paul Simmons, 2 of the best to do it in Arkansas. I don't care what classification division you're talking about. And the good thing is they did it with homegrown talent, Kyle.
Absolutely.
It was seeing the last score with Ouachita Baptist, and it is pronounced Ouachita Baptist, not Washita, College Game Day. They ran the Tiger Special. It's a version of the Philly Special when they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I'm talking about the Eagles. But they ran a little throwback to Eli Livingston, the quarterback who is from Batesville. Just an outstanding football game, outstanding Division II football game for both teams that will have a shot to win a national title, make it back-to-back for the state of Arkansas.
And talking about that homegrown talent, Fayetteville's Connor Flanagan through to Batesville's Eli Livingston, and also Little Rock Christian's Kendall Givens, who we had on the summer series back in August. He scored the other touchdown.
Yeah,
so,
Braden J. from Cabot. Of course, we talked about him. Keelan from Harrison. Andrew Miller from Harding Academy. Just the list goes on.
Yeah, Todd Duggar, who's in the running for possible Defensive Player of the Year in the GAC. Yeah, I mean that's the reason why we picked up. That's one thing on Tuesday, or actually Monday afternoons. So by the time that this comes out, we'll have the GAC report. That's one thing that we've started. We do a GAC report with an emphasis on the Arkansas-based schools. So we do top performers of players that are playing for the Arkansas-based teams, but that also played Arkansas high school football here. So check that out. We also, Southern Arkansas had a big win over Henderson State and the Murphy USA Classic. Man, I'll tell you, Kevin, Southern Arkansas, we thought that they had a chance to really move into that top 3 of the GAC this year after a 10-win season last year. Coach Smiley's done a great job there. So Southern Arkansas has taken their place really at no worse than third. Now, I mean, they deserve a little bit more respect. I think they lost to Ouachita 25-20. Other than that, they've had some close games, but overall handled their business. So I personally think,
best quarterback in the conference, moves in from Northwestern State, I believe, has a transfer. So it's good to see the Mule Riders up there at the top again.
Yeah, definitely great to see. And UCA is a top 15 team. The Razorbacks are doing what the Razorbacks do, but we still got a lot of great football in this state at multiple levels. So that will do it for episode 35 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. Again, YouTube, subscribe, or any of the audio platforms, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, we are there. But other than that, for Kevin Bohannon and all of us here at one more thing too. Be sure and go to the Natural State Sports Network, Facebook or YouTube this week, Tuesday through Thursday. We've got basketball media days. So kind of similar to what we did during football, we've got that rolling for 3 days. So check that out. And we'll have the schedules posted on our social medias. So now for Kevin Bohannon and all of us here at Natural State Sports, my name is Kyle Sutherland. We will catch you next week.